too much of a sales pitch, but
I promise not.
it's interesting to note that TATA, if you look at TATA Communications versus a number of service providers offering telecom cloud services, has taken a somewhat different approach from many peers. And when you really made a push into cloud services, which was announced, in October of last year, there were two things that struck me. One, you were number one pushing on infrastructure as a service, and secondly, it was also public cloud services, and it was towards small and medium-sized enterprises. Could you talk a little bit about what I think might be a very big bet that you're making?
Indeed, Kevin, thanks for asking that. And it is an extremely large bet that we've placed in terms of our infrastructure investments, in terms of our go-to-market, which includes sales and marketing, and our partnerships and alliances. The way we saw the market was that there were the large companies, the large organizations, the enterprise, the local enterprise, that certainly would seem to be the first and the likely target for anybody entering the market. Typically, these companies would already have data centers, right? Significant investments that they have made, and they continue to use that. It is not that we don't focus on such large organizations, we certainly do. And we have engagements where we are engaging with their departments, as well as some of their branches, as well as on a project basis. But where we saw the real growth and the ramp up happening is in the smaller and the growing enterprises, which do not have the wherewithal to set up their own data center, right? However, they do need to have serious servers computing power now and then when they are having the burst mode requirements. And they are the likely candidates for a public cloud offering, right? Because they don't want to have anything behind the firewall except for the clients.
And that's because the SME fundamentally wants to reduce its CapEx.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But they want the functionality and the ability to access that kind of compute and storage power when they need it.
Now, in October, what you initiated was an India out strategy.
That's
but
right.
a few weeks ago, you made another announcement.
Yes. So in October, we launched in India with an infrastructure as a service and software as a service. And then in March, 8th of March last month, we launched in Singapore for Asia Pacific. So now actually we have a data center in Hyderabad and a data center in Singapore, in TCX, both serving cloud for the market. Now you may be asked or thinking that if cloud is a service that can be consumed from anywhere, then why do you need data centers, multiple data centers in different geographies? Primary reason being, if you have a local data center, certainly you do have the advantage of a lower latency in terms of access, right? Of course, then there are the rules and the laws of the land, right, in terms of data. You all know about it. So for all these reasons, as well as having local support, the ability to support the customers with a local number, with a local service support, these are the important drivers that have actually got us to invest in setting up data centers, and you'll see us expanding further in Europe and Americas later in the year.
Right, but this again would be an SME-focused strategy, is that right?
This is a public cloud strategy, right? So it is absolutely relevant for any large enterprise that wishes to adopt public cloud services. So it is not limited to SME. It is a sweet spot in terms of a service offering and a take-up for the SMEs.
I think you mentioned other countries in Asia that you were targeting as well, is that right?
So with the Singapore data center, we are servicing all the surrounding countries, including Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Hong Kong, Thailand. So they can all access the services. We are accepting multi-currency, so we can pay in Singapore dollars or US dollars. And so from that perspective, it's a totally international service.
I suppose what's unusual about this is that most service providers that are going international with a particular service tend to go for the large enterprise. You know, the AT&Ts, the BTs, which I think are in this room, Verizon certainly, they tend to go for the multinational enterprise trying to replicate the portfolio. But what I'm hearing is that you're going to happily try to target SMEs in those particular countries, as well as the large enterprise, but that sounds costly because nobody owns the SME segment, correct?
Absolutely, and that requires us to have a go-to-market model which is different from the way we address our enterprise customers. Enterprise customers are with our direct sales force, and they have these long-term relationships, and we drive those relationships at a global level because all of these companies are global. With SMB and the public cloud offering, we're actually looking at a more marketing and partner-led engagement model. The very nature of the service, which is self-service, and I would request anybody who's connected to just take a look at our site. It's iaas.tatacommunications.com.
That's snappy.
Yeah, thank you. You can just go out there and you can sign up for a trial right now and provision a server in terms of the CPU, the storage, and the memory, and off you go. And if you're a customer who wants to continue after the trial period, you have two options: pay by credit card or by corporate purchase order, and you're set. That's it. It's as simple as that. No year-long contract, no other commitments. You just start off. There you go.
You're making it sound awfully easy, and yet we know that credit cards, not everyone uses a credit card, correct? So what are you going to do in countries not, in fact, like India, where not everyone's using a credit card?
So we do accept the purchase orders, and then we invoice-based, and we will accept the paper purchase order, and then go ahead and...
What about some of the other options I know that you've been looking at, the prepaid options?
We are looking at that. We haven't launched it as yet, but that is an option.
This is something that TATA has been kicking around, an idea. We used to buy telephony minutes, we still do on mobile prepaid. Why not a prepaid cloud? That might be one way to deal with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That would allow us to have the payment in advance as well.
So that means all the people who sell, in the ma and pa shops sell minutes, they might be selling infrastructure as a service. Is that a possibility?
So that's the other part of the go-to-market in terms of the channel. Right? From an SMB perspective, we have to amplify our reach to be able to go and meet up with customers who we normally wouldn't in terms of our enterprise engagements. And that is where the channel partners play a crucial role. We've engaged channel partners in India, over 140 of them, who are selling our traditional network services, and now we are enabling them and refocusing them on our cloud-based services.
So Amit, it occurs to me that in this room, besides the media and analysts, the unimportant people, we also have a number of service providers. And TATA itself is a big wholesale carrier of capacity and minutes and outsourcing services. Surely, are you not perhaps speaking to some potential partners in this room?
Absolutely. So there is a potential and a possibility that we could be engaging with other players, in fact, some of our wholesale relationships, to take these services forward, perhaps as a branded white label product.
Okay, so a white label wholesale cloud is...
It is possible.
So the door is open for that?
The door is open, absolutely.
Right, so I don't know how many one-on-one meetings Amit has got, but that might be an option to discuss with him, right?
I'll put on my sales hat.
Yes, but I think Verizon might have something to say, because Verizon also offers white label cloud services, and has already started that
We'll meet them
last year.
We'll meet them near the alligator farm on the beach.
Okay, I want to take issue with a couple of things that you said. And by the way, audience, please put your hands up if you'd like to ask a question. I'm sure there are a few of you that would like to ask some questions. You did say that unlike the old way that one would perhaps set up a computing environment that took weeks, it now takes minutes.
It takes minutes.
But does it really take minutes? Because it does occur to me that the commercial issues are actually the problem, not the technology.
So if a customer would like to use a paper order and not pay by a credit card, then there is the order processing time that takes days, right? Not months or weeks, but it takes a few days. And then they're often set to go. Other than that, there is the time required for them to upload their image or an application, right, over the network. And that's about it. So there is no waiting for equipment to arrive or installation, and setting it up and testing, and all of that's already done. It's just the access. Right.
Just the access.
Just the access.
Okay, so how long do you think it takes? If there's an SME that doesn't have a broadband line, I don't know, in Thailand or in India, how many days is it going to take them to get a broadband line and then access your facility?
So it can take, as well, if I can speak for India, it can take a day or two to get an access up and running in India.
Is that a feasible time? 2 days to get a broadband line anywhere in India?
Not anywhere, in
Not
some of the
anywhere.
larger cities.
Okay, so let's be a bit more realistic.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you are looking at anywhere, it also depends on the access that one is looking at. If one is looking at dedicated access, it could take a few more days. If somebody is looking at a DSL access that some of the providers have, or even now with 3G, right? Or even over, say, the USB dongles that we have, those are much quicker to turn around. It's not really the technology over there, but it's more in terms of the regulatory process, in terms of proving the entity, the address, the location, the identity, all of that. That takes a couple of days. Right?
Okay, so the regulatory process is
Yes.
one of the key considerations. Okay, well let's go back to the channel and the proposition you're making to the channel. You say that you already recruited 140 reseller partners in India.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what these types of companies are?
So these are our partners who have been selling our network services in the past. So they have been selling to the medium and small organizations the connectivity solutions in the past. And what we are doing right now is that we are re-enabling them, we're training them up to be able to sell cloud services. The reason being that it requires to have a different conversation with the customer, and usually with different people in the companies that you're selling to. Because typically, whereas in an SMB, you may have a common decision maker, as you go into larger and larger organizations, you have the folks who are responsible for the network, different from the folks who are responsible for compute, right? And it requires different conversations, it requires a different level of engagement, it requires knowledge in different areas, ability to talk about compute, ability to talk about operating environment, virtualization, security. So those are the areas where we are actually enabling them to hold those conversations.
So it's actually not the smallest of the small enterprises, it's more medium sized, is that right?
Yes. So let me answer that question by saying that who can actually use infrastructure as a service? Typically, the company, I wouldn't call them small or large, but I say any company that has the IT maturity to be able to provision a server is the likely target audience for IT as a service, right? So it could be, in terms of size, a small company which is an IT shop, which does IT development, they know everything about servers and networks. So they can immediately go and turn it on and start using it. But you could have a mid-sized company that's perhaps in manufacturing and doesn't really have an IT team or IT manager. For them to set up IT as a service would require additional support and help.
Now, in terms of your analysis of the addressable market, let's say in India, how big is that universe in terms of that type of company? What's your assessment?
$1 million question, and I have analysts, my friend analysts in the audience.
All right, analyst vote, it's an opportunity, a bit of segmentation of work, yes?
Yes. So I have seen numbers from tens of millions of dollars in terms of business opportunity in a year.
Oh, but anyone can generate numbers.
Yes.
What about the actual population, the universe of SMEs? How many SMEs are we talking about that you feel fit that frame?
The number that we're looking at in India is around 40,000.
40,000, okay. A universe of 40,000. And the average contract value you're expecting is about what?
That would be pretty much similar to what you have globally, which should be about in terms of $180 to $200. It depends on the use.
200 per month.
Yes, hopefully.
Okay, so do the maths. 40,000 companies at 200 a month times 12. Okay.
So if
I
you're looking
feel that
at
there
a
must be
number,
a fair amount of competition for that.
absolutely. If you're looking at a number, we stated that our goal is to go for $200 to $250 million from a cloud-based service in 2 to 3 years. So that's what we have put out.
And is it, if you look at the Indian demographics versus those in some other countries that you're working or anticipating working in, that's a multiplier effect? Is there a same percentage, number of that strata of SME, that number of SMEs proportionally? Because if you're looking at 40,000 SMEs in a market of X billion enterprises, do you think that there's a fatter proportion, let's say, in some other Asian countries, of that type of organisation?
So we are looking at numbers, perhaps not in that scale that we're looking at in India. But we're looking at significant numbers even for the Asian countries, for Singapore, as well as the surrounding Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand. In fact, the day of launch, we already had 40 trial customers the day we announced.
Well, I trialed it. I don't know how many of the other analysts trialed your service to see if it actually worked. I know that I actually tried to provision a server, and I'm no technical expert. So
did you do it?
I did.
Maybe I stand corrected.
Perhaps badly, actually. But it wasn't that difficult.
Okay, great. It's the next stage. It's about using it as well. It's about knowing the image.
But as you roll this out, what about the pricing? The pricing variables of what is going to be very challenging for you in different countries, surely.
There's always a pricing discussion, but other than pricing, there are several other factors that one needs to look at in terms of the cost of ownership, right? Here's where we were selling pitch. From our perspective, it's totally transparent in terms of the costing model. There are no hidden costs, right? There is no termination fee that says if somebody wants to stop using the service after a year or 6 months, right?
And it's month by month.
It's month by month, it's billed month by month. And essentially what we're doing is we're making sure that everything that we have over there is allowing the customer to have a great user experience, starting from unlimited service support on the phone line, right? There's no cost, it's included, right? Load balancer, firewall, IP addresses, all included. Intra-city between the data center, the data transfers are included. There's no additional cost. So on the website, the cost is published, and that's it in terms of the data center cost. And then, of course, in terms of data, the data output, that's also clearly mentioned in terms of what the charges are. So totally transparent, pay every month based on the usage.
I do wonder about the profitability of this, and it's really too early to tell, surely.
It is because we don't have any historic data to look upon, but at the end of the day, the business modeling that we have done, it certainly allows it to be a profitable service.
Okay, so we go back to that universe of 40,000 SMEs that are going to be sold to by your 140 resellers in India. How much are you expecting to sell infrastructure as a service with connectivity?
So, ideally for the SMB, that is a great value proposition, and it's also a cross-sell for us. So we would certainly like to bundle in, we've created a bundle offering for our IT as a service as well as for our software as a service, where we're offering these to the SME together with the connectivity pack. And certainly that is something that gives us additional revenues.
Is it additional revenues? I guess it's, who's wagging the tail of the dog? Sorry, terrible expression to be translated. But what I mean by that is infrastructure as a service a loss leader? In other words, something you sell at cost or below cost to enable you to sell connectivity, which is a depreciated, profitable service for you?
It is, no, I wouldn't look at it from one compensating the other, right?
Well, in the end, it's one balance sheet, is it not?
At the end, it is one balance sheet. Infrastructure as a service is a standalone business model that we have created with or without access. Right? If the customer chooses to use our access, there are certain benefits that they have in terms of an end-to-end connectivity, in terms of latency, in terms of security, in terms of uptime. Right? However, if there is a service provider they're already using with their own access, that's perfectly fine. And our business model supports that. We don't turn away these customers. It is truly a cloud service.
Okay. I would say that not every one of your peers takes it, is rolling out exactly in that way. Can you talk also, I know that you've been pushing into compute infrastructure as a service, it's a compute and a storage play,
yes.
But really what is selling today from what you can see? Is it actually storage? Is that the killer application?
It may be for some other players. For us, we are actually seeing compute, the overall package, because we are seeing application developers. We are seeing folks who are hosting websites. We're seeing folks who are transient projects using these. Right? I'm sure there is a market for pure play storage, and there is, as we know, right? Right now, we are not totally focused on that market. We are focused on the infrastructure piece, and that's where we're seeing the traction.
Okay, so what you've said is that with some of the trial customers and some of the ones that are actually paying right now, you're seeing application developers use the compute. But they're early adopters anyway, and there's only a certain universe. Out of that 40,000 in India, I can't imagine more than a certain percentage of application developers who need compute. So to go beyond that.
So here is the interesting part about the Indian market. If you follow the ITES, right?
Which is the definition of, if you will, the ICT industry in India. That's one of the abbreviations used, yes.
Yes. So these are actually companies that do development work outsourced for other companies.
So proportionally, it is a demographically large segment of the market.
Yes. So these are the companies that do IT development as business, as their core, or maintenance. Right? So maintenance, development, testing, fine-tuning, their business is doing that for other large corporations. So we see that segment of the industry really honing in on IT as a service and using that rather than having to keep people on buying operating servers, right? Other than that, we do see departments of large enterprise also using IT as a service in order to have their scale up, scale down kind of applications, right? So it's not just SME, it is a play across. The growth is where we see the SME.
But what you've actually said is, if I look at the SME universe, in India, the demographics are such that we have an early adopter segment, in particular vertical segment within the SME market that is highly aligned to the compute.
Absolutely.
That is not the story demographically in other countries in Asia or in Europe that you're addressing. So will it work elsewhere? I suppose that is the big question. Or will it have to be large enterprise in other parts of the world?
It will be a different formula and a different customer base for every region. If we look at Singapore and we look at Asia, the early adopters are from gaming industry. The early adopters, so they're the folks who are developing. So they're developers in a way, but it's not IT, right? From media and entertainment. Right? So it's a different industry. So it's about being able to identify in each of these geographies who are the likely, what is the profile of the likely customer or the likely enterprise, large, medium, small, that is going to take this service, adopt this service, and roll out their applications, their services, their reach out to the market on this. So it's not the one size that will.
So one size most definitely doesn't fit all.
No.
And isn't that a problem with telecom? I mean, because telecom fundamentally is a mass production model applied to the creation and distribution of digital goods. And what you're saying is actually for this to take off, you have to do some level of customization and resegmenting. It seems to be at odds in a way.
Absolutely. We have different divisions, business divisions inside of Tata Communications focused on these different markets. So if you look at a traditional wholesale, there is a segment and there is a certain team that engages for that. In global data and mobility solutions where I belong, we have in my team enterprise-focused go-to-market, which is doing the segmentation, working with analysts, working with channel partners and alliances to understand that market and to be able to create our value proposition and the benefits, right? And to be able to do a market entry strategy. Absolutely and totally a different thing.
Okay. Questions from the audience? Yes. And we're just going to bring you a microphone so you can actually...
Could you pass?
Oh, okay, sorry, one at the back here. We've got one over here too.
Brad Sense.
Brad Sense, you are. Oh, hi.
Just a quick question. In terms of what we're talking about with cloud computing, it has potential to change.
You're not being heard that well.
How's that?
That's good.
It's Brad Sense with Unicom, Australia. Cloud computing will change the nature of the industry. When I look back about 15 to 20 years ago, we talked about IP as our IT and telecommunications as a commodity, and then the need to decommoditize that through management, warrant management, SLAs, degree of quality of service. What I'm seeing now is that we're getting beyond the layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and we're looking at cloud computing as an application-based which is pulling customers. So as a service provider, if we get onto that bandwagon of the cloud, and we have application providers or enterprise providers who then begin to use our network, at what point do we lose that level of influence that we've had with our buyers and with our suppliers? And again, we become a commodity. And I suppose that's not the question at what point, but what I was going to ask was, how can we build in some switching costs with these enterprise and content providers that locks them in, rather than just proving that they've got a product worthwhile on our network? What's to stop them from moving that to smaller providers where they have a greater deal of influence? So what's the switching cost if we look at with these enterprise and content providers?
You're saying switching costs, you mean, let's find a way to lock them in, is actually what you're saying?
Yes.
Right.
So there are providers who have a switch out cost, right, in terms of levying fee if the service is terminated and the customer or the user would like to take the data off. From our service offering, we do not have such fees. Right?
So you're making it easy for them to...
Absolutely. So if a customer decides tomorrow that they don't need the service anymore, for whatever reason, the business doesn't require it, or they're growing into a next level of engagement, which I'll cover off as well, there are no penalties for that from our perspective.
But that's a problem. That's a problem, and that's the point that's being made here, is how are you going to keep them loyal?
So the only way to keep customers loyal is to have a service that is a high quality service at an affordable cost. Right? It's not about being the cheapest, but it's not about being, I know everyone can say that, but to be able to execute and to deliver on that is where the actual secret lies. Right? So it's about being able to have the latest technologies, in terms of performance, in terms of security, in terms of reach and uptime, of course, being...
So it goes down to the customer experience and the service level.
And the service level, yes.
Oh,
It is very difficult to hold back an unhappy customer, right?
Okay. We have one more question.
I have actually two questions.
Okay. Stand up, tell us who you are.
So I'm scientific and straightforward research. By the statistics of the Ministry of Small and Medium Economic Enterprises in India, there are 716,000 enterprises, SMEs in India. So why only 40,000 as a number? What's the criteria? Number one. Number two, what we've seen typically is, folks like yourself are very good at horizontal apps, very basic horizontal apps. When it comes to the end-to-end, let's say, for example, collaboration tools, is a hit and miss. We've seen that SLAs have been an issue. There have been numerous complaints about the flexibility that we provide in SLAs. The fact that when calls are never returned, the service levels are poor and deteriorating. What do you have to say about that? The two questions.
Okay, so the first question is, you talked about a certain number of SMEs. It's 760,000, but there's also a number which crosses well over 1 million, right? In India. So from software as a service, right, which is not what we are focusing on right now, that is a service that the larger SME population can certainly use, right? But if we look at infrastructure as a service, that requires an organization to have the IT maturity to be able to provision a server, right? That is where the number comes down. Is 40,000 the right number? Is it 45? Is it 35? Is it 60? So these are some things that we're working on. There's a fair number of customers to reach out to, and so we thought, that's the number we should go with. But I'm not saying that is absolutely correct number, because SMEs are so widespread, right? So that's one of the reasons why you see a huge drop in the number, right? It's about the IT maturity and the ability to consume that service, right? On the other part, if you look at the service level agreement, we are offering 99.95%, right, uptime. It is not about selling an application or a tool per se in terms of collaboration. It is infrastructure on tap, right? It's available, it's running. Our service center is 24/7, and there's no cost to calling them and speaking to them and taking their help, right? So for all those reasons, it is, it's totally, I would say, a different kind of a business model from what you may be talking about for other application-led sales that you may have seen.
But I don't think you answered his question regarding customer service. Perhaps you comment a little bit about that.
Oh, the customer service in terms, I said the 99.95% uptime that we have with and we're ready to back it up. Not ready, it is, in terms of returning up to 20% if we fail in terms of our uptime. So we're betting our money on it.
You can try that one. Okay. Any other questions? We'll take, I think we're running we've got to take.
Very last question.
All right, I'm being told that we've got to move on, but I think we ought to take one more question. Just one more. Then we'll go, okay? A quick question, please. And Amit is around, correct? You're around?
Yes, I'm around. I'm around till tomorrow.
I guess it's good afternoon.
And you are?
My name is Chong Pao Min. I'm the head of the fixed product for Maxis in Malaysia. Thanks for the short presentation, short and sweet, get to the salient points. As a service provider, and all of us and many of us here in this room, is that we talk about the benefits of IaaS and cloud computing to our customers. I would like to ask you your observation as well as experience that how many of service providers here today are actually eating our own dog food? How many of us here are deploying cloud internally, infrastructure as service, and in that way, how many of us have actually able to deliver product fast enough because of that development in such technology? Thank you.
Excellent. So I can speak for ourselves. Our entire HRMS system is on cloud.
Okay.
And we're using the same platform that we sell.
Great.
Our entire sales management system is on cloud.
All right then. And you can pay each other yourselves credit when it goes down. Right? Okay. Well, thank you very much for a candid discussion.